and $9 for the water line and the sewer line, and doesn't have any out-of-pocket expenses. So back in 2014, we partnered with AMO LAS to offer this program to their members. So we're endorsed by them, and we're partnered with 70 municipalities across Ontario, Northern and Southern Ontario municipalities of all sizes, because, as I mentioned, many homeowners are not aware of their responsibility and are looking to the town to get some information about those service lines, and think when they have a problem that it is the town's responsibility, and are surprised, unfortunately, to find out that they're on their own. So through our partnerships with the town, we basically do kind of an educational PSA to say, hey, residents, did you know when it comes to this responsibility, this is what is the town's, this is what is your responsibility on your private side. In the event that you wish to enroll in an optional warranty program, this is something that's available to you at a low cost that will take care of these issues should you have a problem. So it's 100% optional for homeowners. We have 24/7, 365 customer service. We work with local contractors in your area. There's no cost to the municipality. We simply ask the municipality endorse the program. And then in most cases, we pass back a small royalty to the municipality, just intended to compensate for any kind of staff time or resources that may be taken up by just getting the ball rolling in terms of getting the program up and running. After that, we aim to really not take up to kind of a turnkey approach. We administer everything ourselves. And the vast majority of our municipal partners do take that royalty. We have a couple who do not, and they pass that back to their residents for lower rates, which in some cases looks like perhaps about 50 cents less roughly. So both are options that are available. So this is the coverage for the 3 different products. It's the external sewer line, the external water line, and then we have an interior plumbing option as well. It's obviously not as relevant because it's not tied in with the town's infrastructure, but it is something that people often sign up for when they enroll in both products, simply because that way, you know, anytime they call a plumber, they don't have a sudden unexpected bill as long as they're paying a small monthly fee. So in terms of qualifications, typically it's single family dwellings. We're not working with commercial properties just because the scope of those jobs ranges so much. So it's really kind of the typical family dwelling. We don't work with any rental properties just because it has to be the homeowner who purchases the warranty themselves, so it's not the tenant. There's no pre-inspection of any of the pipes because it would be very difficult for us to go around to each home and do that. So people are simply asked if they're flowing, and we were not inspecting the pipes previously, but there's 30 days before they're able to make a claim, just in order to avoid any people who are enrolling because they have active issues. So through our approach, we raise awareness through a direct mail and public relations campaign, which we pay for. So it's no cost to the municipality. It's not available direct to consumers, so we do ask that the municipality endorse the program. There's a couple reasons for that. Primarily, an average homeowner isn't aware of AMO LAS, so us being endorsed by them doesn't really have a significance for your average resident. If we were to mail something to them with our logo on it, people are often inundated with all kinds of various scams and home offers, and it's hard for sometimes people to know what's legitimate and what isn't. And so, chances are that $1 per letter marketing spend that we have would get tossed in the garbage. I think we all do it, right? So this basically says that if it is sent in conjunction with the town's logo, people will at least open it and read it. Once they open it and read it, they can obviously decide if it's something they see the value in participating in or not. But it just ensures that people are actually going to kind of absorb the message and see that it's something that is supported by the town as well. So it's not that, if people call and enroll and they ask, for us to come in and take care of their problem, we're going to be there because it's been kind of vetted, by the town. So that's essentially how that part works. The contractor network I touched on a little bit briefly, that we work with local contractors. So we work basically with, first we'll take any referrals from the municipality if they're contractors that you would typically refer to people, but we basically make sure that they're qualified. We're regularly taking surveys from the customers to ensure that they're meeting our standards of customer service. And so there's a number of items there that I can kind of dive into further, but essentially we partner with qualified local contractors that we ensure are going to do things up to code and are going to pull the appropriate permits and take care of things properly. We also have a foundation that we call CARES. So if you have a homeowner in your community who has one of these issues, but they're not enrolled in the program and you are partnered with us, if you bring that resident to our attention, we will do our best. I mean, it's very likely, but provided obviously within reason, we'll take care of their job for them, you know, as a partner in your community. So that's something that we have been doing throughout many of our partnerships. And we've completed nearly $500,000 worth of pro bono jobs for homeowners in the community. So that's something that would be always available to homeowners as well through partnership. So at this point, I'll take any questions. I know we're kind of tight on time, so I'll give you the opportunity to ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. And do we have questions? Anyone with questions? Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Elise. This is a really interesting opportunity. And I, for one, am supportive of our municipality getting involved. And I would ask if council agrees that we ask staff to come back with a report on their thoughts on this. And secondly, you answered my question regarding just people, because this could impact somebody's ability to stay in their own home. And at our upper tier, we partner with Lanark County, and they do offer, if a furnace goes out or if a roof needs an emergency repair and the family qualifies, they could be covered. So I'd love to include this in the bundle of services to keep people in their own home.
Yes,
as long. Yeah,
absolutely. No, we know it's always, you know, we're always happy to be able to help out with those jobs in a community, and it's always very nice for us to be able to see we're making a difference when we do have those customer stories, for sure. And I can share a number of ones that we've done around Ontario. And it's nice to be able to help when there are those opportunities, for sure, because it can be a huge cost and it can be a huge inconvenience. And I know myself because it happened to me over the holidays and I had to have my sewer line replaced. So after 5 years of telling everyone how valuable this program is for homeowners, I experienced it firsthand, but unfortunately the town I live in isn't partnered with us. So I had to pay out of pocket for those repairs. And so now I tell everyone, you know, it's wonderful when you can see the value in what we're offering, because it really is a great option for residents who don't have any kind of coverage through their homeowner policy. I'm with a small insurer myself, and they don't have this kind of coverage. And we always encourage people to check what coverage they have through their homeowner policy. You know, we're not saying to replace if you have something, but typically those coverages also have deductibles always, right? At least that can be pretty costly for people just out of pocket to get back up and running. And it also, you know, for some people who are, you know, seniors and people who are, you know, at home, when they're calling a 1-800 number 365, we're sending someone out. So it's not just the part about us taking care of the cost, but also we're taking away the inconvenience of them having to go out and find somebody out of the phone book who may or may not be doing, you know, high quality repairs. So that's a real value as well.
thank you. I wasn't thinking as much pro bono as I was if there's a system in place where either the county or the lower tier actually bought some policies, but there's that 30-day, you can't buy it when a problem comes up, which is usually when they call the county, but that's another discussion.
Yeah. Well, through the awareness, you know, campaigns that we do, you know, we try and get the word out as much as possible, and they are very affordable, you know, between $8 and $9 a month for the level of coverage that you get. Like 99% of jobs will fall within that. And so if people are aware that that's an option for them, then hopefully they sign up and they're covered before they have a problem.
And my final question, Madam Chair, is are permits covered in the insurance, the cost of the permits? I know the construction, you said if I had this, but if there's a
no, so that would be worked out between us and the contractor.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so they would be typically when we come into a community, we look at the local contractors and we partner, we discuss different partnerships with them. And one of those things that come up when we're having those discussions with the contractors that we partner with is permits. And so that's worked out between us and the contractor. And really it's to take away the headache from the resident. That way, all they have to do is call us, and the idea is to not only make it affordable, but also to make it easy for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I don't see any at the moment, least, but a great presentation. And I'm like Peter, I'm really thinking that this could be something very, very beneficial to our residents. I know just recently of a lady that had some issues, and the $5,000 she had to pay to get it corrected really put a hole in her budget at that particular time. So
Like I said, it happened to me 2 weeks before Christmas, so I can appreciate it.
you can feel for her. Yes.
I do.
So from here, like Peter said, maybe if staff came back with a recommendation or their thoughts on this, that would be good for us. But this was a great presentation. I really thank you so very kindly.
Thank you very
for coming
much.
in.
I appreciate it. And you guys have my contact information. So if there are any other questions that come up afterwards or any other information that I can provide, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks all. Have a good night.
Take care. You also. Okay, moving forward. CAO and directors reports, and I believe we have a few this evening.
We do indeed, Madam Chair, 3 in fact, and I would suggest we start with Chief Cheeseborough.
Thank you. Welcome, Chief Cheeseborough.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one quick report tonight. I'm pleased to advise you that we've been successful in recruiting a part-time dispatcher, Tammy Hardy. Tammy brings 21 years of experience dispatching for the OPP and for Durham Regional Police. And she's also a part-time dispatcher for Smith Falls Police. So we're excited to have Tammy start. She started late last week, and she'll continue her training here for a couple of weeks. That is my
That's
update.
wonderful. Any questions? No, we just think this is really great. Thank you for the good news.
Thank you.
Okay, we're dispatching with these reports very quickly. Next up is Julia Crowder.
Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to advise Council that last week, staff in the Economic Development Department attended the 66th Annual Economic Development Council of Ontario's conference in Toronto. This year's theme was transformation, to highlight the challenges and opportunities communities experience as they continue to change and evolve through ongoing COVID recovery. The conference provided valuable information and insights into a number of key priorities of this council, including workforce development, investment attraction with a focus on industrial and foreign direct investment, as well as affordable housing. Digital copies of the presentations will be made available at some point, and staff will forward links to community partners and council for information.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments? No, look forward to that report coming. Thank you very much for attending and being here tonight to advise us of this. Thank you, Julia.
And Madam Chair, the last report is from myself. I have 3 items to cover. The first is the town hall renovations. I'm delighted to share that it's progressing and the finish line is in sight. The unseasonably mild temperature provided a good opportunity to put the new windows in. That's been happening over the last couple of days, including today. So we're going to see some obvious improvements this week. We do have a few interior items to attend to, some audiovisual stuff, some IT hookups. And we'll keep council apprised as to the occupancy date. The other thing we're working on is a certification of the elevator. So we're getting near the end, but still a few key items to do before we can occupy the space. But we're certainly hoping that in March we'll be able to get back into in-person meetings.
Excellent.
Second item is just an acknowledgement of last week's announcement by Canopy Growth Corporation. I think we're all trying to digest the gravity of what occurred last week. And I just want to assure committee and those watching of two things. Firstly, we've reached out, Ms. Crowder has reached out to several workforce partners on track, several ministries, provincial ministries to look at employment supports that we can help facilitate for those affected by last week's announcement. We're also, in fact, earlier today, a group met to orchestrate a job fair, so that's going to happen very soon. So we're certainly putting lots of energy into alleviating the stresses that befell the people, some of the people at Canopy last week. So we've got a great team approach, a lot of people working on this, and we hope to help those people out very soon. The other thing we're working on, of course, is working closely with Canopy to understand exactly what their changes will mean. The consolidation into the Lawrence Street property will be one of them. So we're working closely with them to understand what the fate of the original One Hershey Drive plant will be. And we've reached out to several investment type organizations to start looking at opportunities that might exist. But clearly we need to understand what Canopy, what their decision will be on the facility and property first. So a lot of activity occurring since Thursday, and we'll keep council apprised of success in moving this forward, and hopefully one day in the not too distant future, having people working out of that facility in some capacity. So thank you for that. Third item is the strategic plan. Committee will recall back in early January, we had a strategic planning session. From that, we collectively generated 6 draft strategic priorities and a whole host of initiatives to support the priorities. So a couple of things are happening this month. In fact, this week we'll be launching the public consultation through Speak Up Smiths Falls as part of our new website. So that will be going out. We also have a stakeholder group that will be assembling mid-month, or the 23rd, I think it is. We have a staff session in early March, and we hope to have a draft back to this committee in late March or early April. So that's moving along very well. We've got great engagement. A lot of people are interested in participating and providing their input. So we're hopeful we're going to have a strategic plan that is widely endorsed throughout the community. That's certainly the goal. So the conversation's underway. And that concludes my reports for this evening.
Did anyone have any questions of CAO Morse? Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Sarah Morris. Do you anticipate perhaps in the next maybe month or two coming back to council regarding Canopy and the implications, both financial and others, and some sense of, and I know it's evolving and it's still news, so that's why I wanted to give it enough time so we could absorb the ramifications of it. But do you see, or is council interested in having perhaps an overview of the impacts on the community in a more, not detailed, but somewhat like tax implications, employment implications? What is the short and medium impact on our community in a little more detail? That's something other than me that is council's interested in.
Yes. Yes. Peter, I see where people are saying yes, they're interested in how this is going to affect us for sure. Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. We can kind of take stock of where we are in a month's time. And by that point, we'll have had a more fulsome discussion with officials at Canopy Growth. And we'll also have a better sense for the degree of reemployment success that we'll have. So yeah, absolutely. If that's the direction of committee, we will certainly do so.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, CAO Morse. That was a lot of information, and we look forward to definitely the information coming forward pertaining to Tweed and the effects it has on the town. And I also am waiting for you to say, yes, we're back into council chambers. So thank you very kindly.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have a correspondence item, and this is a letter that came from John Joint. It's for information correspondence. I'm not going to read it all to you. I just wanted to maybe highlight a couple of things. Mr. Joint does not live in town, and he states that. He was concerned about the bridge not being replaced to traffic, and he has been involved in the town for a number of years. His family owned a lot of property within this town, and it was his concerns that he felt the bridge, Confederation Bridge, should be a vehicle bridge again, like it was. And he just wanted to express his opinions, which he did in a very nice way. And if anyone would care to see this, I'm sure it can be passed on to them. One of the things that I wanted to say was part of his connections go back to his great-great-grandfather, Sam Barnes, and his great-great-uncle, Robert Stacy, who were both mayors of the town of Smith Falls. So he definitely does have a connection to the town, and we appreciate his input about this. And that is for information. So there is copies if anyone would care for that. Moving on, we have no in-camera issues. We'll move right into priority items. And the first up this evening is Deputy Chief Jody Empey with an amendment to the taxi bylaw. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you for having me, Madam Chair and council members. I'll be brief. I had reviewed the taxi bylaw. It hadn't been reviewed since 2014. And I wanted to ask for some changes to the bylaw. One of the things that I'd like to have amended was that the taxi drivers always had badges that they would wear as identification. I'd like to modernize that and have a more laminated version with a photo, the taxi license, and our crest on the front of the taxi cab. So it would be on their dash or on their visor that would show clients who the drivers are and have a more identifiable way of knowing who their taxi drivers are. Just to go with more than what in Ottawa and other municipalities are doing. We do the same thing here with the service that they go through background check and criminal record checks and vulnerable screening. So none of that's going to change. It'll just be to get rid of the badges that they used to wear. It's also a cost saving measure. The badges that were costing us over $500 annually to laminate a license will probably cost about $20 altogether per year. We have 27 taxi drivers and we do it usually annually. So it's going to be a cost saving measure as well. There's other things in the bylaw that should be amended. For example, making it gender neutral, not referring to taxi drivers as he. As we know, there's taxi drivers, different genders. So just to update that, I've highlighted it for council awareness, everything that should be amended if approved. The other part was all the sections such as the Insurance Act is now changed to Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act. Narcotics Control Act has been changed as well. So there's different acts that have been updated that I noted needs to be updated as well in the bylaw. So I highlighted everything that should be updated if approved. And we look after everything else as far as the taxi license. And that is pretty well it for my proposal.
Thank you, Jody. Do we have anyone with questions or comments? Councillor McKenna?
Everyone's so quiet tonight, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep thank you, Deputy Chief. This just taking the initiative and updating these kind of documents there. It's so easy to almost 9 years slips by. And so really pleased that you've done it. And the fact that you can save some money at the same time is terrific. So I'm very much in support of this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other questions? No, hearing none. Thank you very, oh, we got a thumbs up. We're getting thumbs up, Jody. So that's a really good thing. And thank you very much for
Okay.
bringing this forward for us.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. This will come forward at another meeting for approval? Yes, okay. Okay, moving on, we're into award of tender replacement report. This is with Jason Barlow, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of council. Tonight I bring forward report 2023-023, and this is to award the tender for the GAC replacement at the water treatment plant. GAC is granular activated carbon, which is one of the medias that we use to polish or to also treat the water as it goes through the facility. So the purpose of tonight's report is to obtain the council approval to award tender 22-PW-010 to Continental Carbon Group Incorporated for the replacement of the water treatment plant granular activated carbon filter media. At the facility, we have 3 granular activated carbon sand filters. These filters are used after our DAF process to finish off our treatment and polish, remove any turbidity or any items within the water that the DAF system does not capture. The carbon was last changed out in 2017, so it's been just over 5 years, and we are due again based on the results from the annual testing that we complete. There was one proposal submission, and it was from Continental Carbon Group, and this is the same group that provided the carbon in 2017 for that replacement. So option 1, which is recommended, is to award the tender to Continental Carbon Group for the replacement of the water treatment plant filter granular activated carbon, and the tender submission meets all the requirements. It is in good order. And out of our budget, we budgeted $450,000 this year for the GAC replacement. And this project, if awarded, is a submitted price of $406,836.48, which includes the 1.76% of the HST that is non-recoverable by the town for these projects. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls pass a resolution to award tender 22-PW-010 to Continental Group Incorporated for the replacement of the water treatment plant granular activated carbon filter media. And further, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Continental Group Incorporated in the amount of $406,836.48.
Wonderful. Comments, questions? I don't see any. I see thumbs up. Thank you so much, Jason. That's a great report. Thank you. And that'll come forward at another meeting to be passed. Now, we still have you with us, and this is for screen replacement report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. For the next report, 2023-024, and this is for the award of tender 22-PW-008 at the wastewater treatment plant screen replacement project. So the purpose of this report is to gain council approval to award tender 22-PW-008 to Harrington Mechanical Limited for the replacement of the water pollution control plant bar screens. The bar screens at the plant are in our headworks building, and there are preliminary treatments, so they remove any larger debris, rags, any paper, plastics, or metals from the wastewater, so they don't get thrown into our next processes, and there's an opportunity there to damage or impact the further treatment equipment in the process. So they are an integral part of our treatment at the wastewater plant. The current screens are approaching 30 years of age and are in very poor condition. So the replacement is required. Funding for this project has started, it was probably before 2019, but I began in 2019, so that's where I put the figures from. And because of our PLC project, so that's why there was a delay, because the PLCs were seen as a higher risk in case of failure. So that's the reason why it was this project over the years has kind of been pushed off. But we've been doing the work on the selection of screens that we would want at the wastewater plant based on some of the attachments that are within this report to provide the best value for the residents and for the town of Smiths Falls. This tender was advertised on December 5th. There was a mandatory site meeting at the wastewater plant on December 21st. There were 5 potential bidders that came to the mandatory site meeting. The key requirements were outlined by R.V. Henderson, who was the engineering firm who put together the packages and the drawings for us. And also myself as the town liaison was there to answer any questions. On January 19th, the RFP was closed and the town received 2 proposal submissions. One was from Harrington Mechanical for the $884,350 excluding HST. And the option one which is recommended is to award the WPCP bar screen project to Harrington Mechanical Limited. A review of the tender submission found the proposal to be accurate, complete, in good order, and compliant to all the standard procedures. For financial implications, in 2022, there was $550,000 budgeted. We used some of those funds to complete the drawings and the technical aspects for the tender in 2022. So there's $535,000 that is going to be carried over to 2023 for this budget. We have to make up the total budget for this project comes in at $1,084,000, and that's inclusive of the net HST, and that is encompassing the contract administration or engineering, as well as some contingency in there in case there is added work that is required to be done based on the project. We're working with a lot of concrete and different things that are over 25 years old, 25 to 30 years old, so and have been underwater for many years that we haven't put our eyes on it. So this is the opportunity to also see what's going on there, just in case something was to happen. So I'll just read the recommendation. As that Council of the Corporation Town of Smith Falls pass a resolution to award tender 22-PW-008 to Harrington Mechanical Limited for the replacement of the water pollution control plant bar screens. And further, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Harrington Mechanical Limited in the amount of $899,914.56. And that includes the non-recoverable HST.
Thank you. Questions, comments? No, I don't see any questions. That's something that we need to move forward on, and that will come to us at, oh, sorry, Councillor McKenna.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. CEO Morse had his hand up before I did, and I'd be happy to follow him.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to comment that this procurement is entirely emblematic of the inflationary pressures that are that come to bear right now. You know, this was a budget of $550,000 several years ago, and we can see the result now. So in response to that, Mr. Barlow has made a commitment to engage with the contractor to look at opportunities to value engineer the project and keep some of those costs down. So we're not entirely hopeful we'll find huge savings, but there may be some synergies that we can have a look at. But I just wanted to point that out because this is what's driving some of those difficult budget discussions that you had over the past several weeks.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just Mr. Barlow, would we get 30 years out of this new product as we did the old one?
Well, I would say, you know, based on proper maintenance and care of the equipment, that there's no reason why we should not.
So that investment is spread out over 3 decades. Okay, thank you. I'm supportive of your recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, I don't see any. I see thumbs up. I see thumbs up. So that's a good thing. This will come forward at another meeting to be approved. Now you can't go away. You're still here for the next one also. Exemption to procurement bylaw.
Thank you,
Capital.
Madam Chair. Yes, so I also bring forward report 2023-028, and this is exemptions to the procurement bylaw for select 2023 capital items. The purpose of the report is to seek the approval for an exemption to the procurement of goods and services bylaw to allow the procurement of select goods and services between $2,000 and $20,000 and select goods and services greater than $20,000 in the 2023 and utilized within the water utilities department. Some background, this report, although the different numbers involved in some of the items comes forward every year over the last few years as we have some pump rebuilds. With these pumps, we cannot estimate what the cost is going to be between different bidders before the pump's taken apart, dismantled, and all the pieces are viewed and assessed. So that's why we need to select a local company. We send the pumps to this company. They dismantle the pump and let us know what the required parts for the rebuild are going to cost to get it back into 100% operational mode. So out of that, there's the 3 pumps, and then we also this year we have the exterior door replacement here at the water plant. The budget is $69,000. It's hard to tender as this is not enough money to complete all the doors, but I would request that we use request for quotations from contractors so we can still get a good value for what needs to be done, but to be able to select certain doors that require the most work as soon as possible, so we can get those done and have that job completed. And the 5th item on this is the valve maintenance trailer. There's not a lot of suppliers for this equipment, and we can get quotations from different companies, but it's all for the same trailer. So we just wanted a request for a quotation instead of tender, as this will keep the cost down and we'll be able to get the best value based on the quotations that are received from the suppliers. So the option 1 is recommended is grant the exemption to the listed products. If council authorizes an exemption to procurement of goods and services by law for the projects listed in the report, staff are confident that we will obtain the best value for the products and services required. So the recommendation is that council of the corporation of the town of Smith Falls also authorize an exemption to the procurement goods and services bylaw 7850-2004 as amended to permit the purchase of select goods for the Public Works and Utilities Department as outlined in the Committee of the Whole Report 2023-028.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Miller with her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. The first one is more of a question for CAO Morris. I know our procurement bylaw has been under review for a while now, and with this market restrictions and limitations of this bylaw will continue to impact us negatively in my mind. Do you have a timeline on when we might see this updated?
Yeah, great question. So through the chair, this procurement bylaw was written in 2004, and we all know that things have changed considerably. So it will be on our 2023 work plan once we get staffed back up to where we should be. Hope to have a few announcements shortly about that. We'll be better positioned and resourced to move forward with this, but certainly the operating departments like Mr. Barlow's have brought this to our attention that it is cumbersome. So this is a symptom of an outdated bylaw. So we will be updating it, and my prediction would be later in 2023.
Thank you. Madam Chair, could I ask my other questions?
You certainly may.
Thank you. Jason, I see that you listed there were 11 projects, but I think I'm only seeing 5. Is that just a mistake or am I counting
Yes,
wrong?
there was some corrections made in my report and I
Okay.
took the 11, change that to 5.
Okay, perfect. And I think just as a commentary then, Madam Chair, I think I would be more comfortable allowing this process to be temporarily changed for the projects that are under 100,000. And once we have the updated procurement bylaw, we can avoid having this challenge again. But I think when we get over 100,000, the tender process makes more sense to me. It's just my 2 cents worth.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? And I'm afraid you're going to have to holler at me because I've lost my second screen. I can't see most of you any longer. Councillor McKenna, I do see your hand.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to seek clarity on Councillor Miller's question. Is that across the board or just for the water treatment procurement items or any item that the municipality? We don't buy too many items over 100,000, but.
Through the chair, I was just making a comment on this report.
So just water and wastewater.
Well,
So
on the items suggested in this report.
Okay.
That was my suggestion, but Mr. Barlow may have comments on that if it's not practical. I just think we get up too high and we stray from our policy a bit much, but.
Anything else? Anyone else? Please jump in and tell me because.
Yeah, I do, Don. Jay.
Yes, Jay.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this recommendation in this report, and I look forward to an updated procurement bylaw. But we're going to take care of it in the next council meeting, I would assume, for these items.
Yes. Anyone else? No? Then Jason, it sounds like this is going to come forward. I don't see anybody saying no, and we do have to move on with doing business for sure. Thank you very much for all your work this evening. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, we're now with Chief Cheeseborough with disposal of fire department assets report. Chief, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My report tonight is for information purposes. We have had a second pumper, the original pumper we've had in reserve pending when we acquired the new pumper. And the purpose to retain that at the time was to ensure that we were still able to provide the proper coverage to our surrounding municipalities and within our municipality. We have reevaluated our current position and it's been determined that that pumper is no longer required. At that time, we contacted the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs and had an advertisement placed on the website. The minimum bid was put in at 20,000. We had brought in an evaluator who had evaluated the vehicle between 15 and 17,000. So we thought we'd go a little high on the minimum bid. We had 4 interested parties at the time. And on the closing date, lo and behold, there was a bid submitted at the $20,000 mark, and that was from the Saskatchewan First Nations Emergency Management Program. We accepted the bid, and since that point, we have received payment for the vehicle. The vehicle is expected to be picked up within the next 2 or 3 days, and that $20,000 in the report, as indicated, will go for equipment replacement and or protective clothing replacement. We put the equipment and protective clothing in for that purpose. Simply, we didn't have a number as we've recruited a number of new firefighters, new recruits. So as opposed to putting that in as a budget line, capital budget line, we now have a reserve account with that money to go in. At the same time, Director McMunn had initiated the vehicle replacement through Enterprise Corporation, the leasing company. We received the new vehicle for the fire department, a new unit. Enterprise had suggested that we could return the old vehicle to them. They would place that in the auction. It was determined that if it went to the auction, whoever bid whatever amount that vehicle would go. So we had the vehicle evaluated by the local dealership where the vehicle was originally purchased. They determined that the vehicle in the range of $7,000 would be a good price. We conferred with Enterprise Corporation. They thought that maybe a little more would be a good price for the vehicle. Lo and behold, we had a third party come in, Derbyshire Auto Sales, who found out that the vehicle was going to be for sale and offered us $7,400 for the vehicle. At that time, we accepted that bid. A check was received and deposited, and the vehicle was taken out of our hands. So that's the disposal of two vehicles. And I must say, with the pumper sale, that will be transported to Saskatchewan at the cost for the purchaser. We've incurred no cost for that vehicle to have it picked up and delivered to Saskatchewan. That is my report for this evening.
Thank you. I think you're a pretty good salesperson.
Or a very lucky one.
Councillor McKenna?
Thanks, Chief. That's good news. Can you maybe stock the cab of that pumper going west with some Smiths Falls bling and maybe some cannabis or something to promote our town?
Through the chair, we will try to promote the town whatever way possible by ensuring that it does have Smith Falls items contained within that vehicle.
Lovely. Great idea. Did anyone else have any comments? No, this all sounds good. Thank you so very much for your report this evening. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Strategic Planning for Heritage Conservation Report. This is with Director Grenke, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. In December 2022, staff presented a proposal to council that we be directed to undertake a strategic plan for heritage conservation. This strategic plan would look at heritage conservation as a unique service the town operates, both in terms of how we implement the Ontario Heritage Act, but also not necessarily limited to that. We can look further afield as well. Strategic planning for heritage conservation would help with the task-focused annual work planning that we attempt to do with MHC, but also guide and assist us in our own work. Before giving staff this direction, council had requested further information on the proposed Heritage Conservation District study process, which of course is an important planning policy project in its own right, and how these two projects would interact. We're approaching the Heritage Strategic Plan as more operational in nature that'll guide the work of staff and the committee, and which will be internally produced. And our hope is that it can be wrapped up this year. The previous MHC as a whole supported the idea of this as a whole, recognizing that we've not done this before. The proposed Heritage Conservation District is, of course, a longer-term planning policy that would be focused on managing change and facilitating compatible infill in a defined part of town. As a major project, the HCD study and plan, if approved, would be timed and prioritized through the Council Strategic Plan implementation section. The Heritage Strategic Plan is envisioned as a 5 to 10 year roadmap that would define a vision, outline areas of public interest and priority, and set a roadmap for enhancing your heritage planning process and implementations, and would answer the key questions of where we are and what we have now, where do we want to go, what do we need to do to achieve this vision, and of course, how do we monitor all of that. In recent years, there's been significant interest in heritage as we've looked at development proposals for important heritage buildings and features in town. We've also seen significant growth throughout the town, which generates interest in placemaking and acknowledging the built and cultural heritage values of our community as a whole. At this point, staff have identified the need and importance of undertaking this work to help inform how we plan for heritage and to more fully leverage the skills, experience, resources, and passion that exist within our community. As such, staff recommend that we be directed to undertake this process, and that when completed, it will be presented to council for approval. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. That's quite a report. I was really quite interested as I read all your information here. And do we have comments or I see Councillor McGuire, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks a lot, Carl, for your report. I followed up with all of our returning members of the Municipal Heritage Committee that don't have a conflict with this before the meeting tonight. And the consensus with the group is definitely that their priority is seeing the Heritage Conservation District get put through. When we look at the 5 questions in the report, a lot of the returning members of the committee see those rooted in the Heritage Conservation District. And I know when I joined the Municipal Heritage Committee in 2016, an HCD was on the radar then, and it was part of that 10-year window. And the feeling is really that we have to finish the last 10 years before we can start the next 10 years. When I think of how busy we've been in our planning department, there's been a huge workload with the unprecedented builds happening in Smith Falls. And I think of things like the sign bylaw that we're waiting for, that I'm really looking forward to. I'm thinking also of the new CIP program that's going to put a bigger burden on staff because there's not a committee to, to vet the applications. So right now, I don't see this as a priority that it's going to help us move forward with. It's going to add something to the plate that I don't see us having the bandwidth for. And I think the Heritage Conservation District is going to provide the information that's going to give better answers to these 5 questions and give us a better roadmap for the next 10 years when we're looking, say, 2023, 2024, 2025 going forward, depending how long it takes the HCD to go through. So I don't support the recommendation tonight, but look forward to seeing the HCD coming in the future.
Thank you. Other comments? Anyone else have Councillor Miller?
Thank you. And I saw Councillor McKenna put his hand up too, Madam Chair, just so you know. So I always support strategic planning because I think it helps us visualize the future. I have some hesitation, and I've spoken to Carl at length about this, about the development of a heritage conservation district. I'm really unclear about the economic impacts of our downtown, if that's the district. And so I'm very wary about that project. I realize we've put it in the budget, but I am anxious about it. So I'm not sure how these two things remain separate, but I do, if I had to choose, I would choose a strategic plan at this point before the conservation district. But as a general statement to your recommendation, Carl, I do support moving forward with the strategic plan.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question would have been similar to Councillor McGuire's, is just the capacity to take this on as well. We have a small and dynamic and busy planning department, and to take this on, because I was interested, it said budget implications. It said, very modest except for staff time. Could you perhaps expand? What does that staff time look like? And I'm not trying to get into operations. I really just, we collectively, municipalities have been criticized either provincially or by developers as being too slow to respond to on our side of things. I disagree with that locally, but what is, as Councillor McGuire calls it, bandwidth, and what is the capacity to take this on?
Carl, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, for your question. And certainly it's fair to say that that from an operational perspective, as planning staff, our priority is applications. That is applications and those matters that especially that produce or generate housing development. So I think with respect to a heritage strategic plan as an internal document, the point is well taken. And the question of, do we start with one or start with the other? Certainly, I appreciate and welcome council's feedback and how the two processes interact with each other. And in my mind, they are separate processes. One looks at operations across the town as a whole. The other is, of course, focuses on a specific geographic area. It's something that would take certainly a heritage conservation district study, and the process that follows after that, if adopted by council leads to a plan, isn't something that can be done this year. It's something that would be done over the course of a couple of years, especially if we do go above and beyond the bare minimum requirements of the Heritage Act in terms of engaging the public and really doing the research on those properties. The level of effort and involvement in developing a heritage conservation district depends to a large part on how big that district is. The larger the district, the more work, the more research that has to be done. And I've seen heritage conservation district plans that are 18 pages long and others that are a couple of hundred pages long. So that is, I think the municipality has a wide degree of wide degree of discretion in terms of what we put in there, how we regulate, and what is it that we regulate. But I think in terms of and that's why, given the magnitude of that project, staff were envisioning the timing and prioritization of the HCD study and process is part of the broader council strategic planning initiative, where when we develop that work plan, we can look at, because there's likely going to be a number of other fairly significant policy pieces that would be looked at over the course of those 4 years, and we'd look for council's direction in terms of which ones start when and where, and where do we begin. The strategic plan, I think that idea is certainly, it is ambitious to include that along with the other pieces, but it does fulfill a need, in the opinion of staff, to have that broader look at heritage as a whole, and certainly depending on how council wishes to prioritize these items and the direction that you would like to proceed, we can look at staging that either now or potentially later, and potentially council has the option to defer the strategic plan until we're a little bit further along the Heritage Conservation District path, if that's something that council wants to look at it as a whole. But I think broadly speaking, that is the rationale for why one was presented as an operational item that is intended to be accomplished internally, and the other was a broader planning policy piece that we would be looking at within the broader strategic portion of the municipal work plan for the next 4 years.
And if I
Thank
could
you.
just follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes,
So
certainly.
if does your internal operational plan require council support? If it's an internal, like, do you really, or is it, I understand Heritage District would, but if this is on minimal resources and something you would want to do as part of your work, do you actually need to have our green light on that?
My preference is that the plan be adopted by council, so that council gives us the broad buy-in for the content and the general direction that's included in there.
Thank you. Peter, did you have something else?
No, I just saw maybe C.O. Morris wanted to chime in on that.
I do have Councillor Brennan and then CAO Morris.
Go ahead, CEO, and then I'll go.
Thank you. I would just like to say that, the departmental or division operating plans are something that that are done internally. And I think we'll have a more fulsome picture of workloads once we finalize the strategic plan, identify the initiatives that we need to undertake, and most importantly, the timing of those initiatives. So I think it would be exceptionally ambitious to think we could do both the Heritage District and the strategic plan simultaneously, even though the former will be done by a consultant. There's still obviously staff involvement in that. I think what's being proposed is if the strategic plan is important, we'll get started on it, working internally. And then once we overlay those strategic objectives council wants us to do, we'll have a much better sense for timing. So I think Carl's comment that this could be a multi-year, each could be a multi-year project, is a really safe statement to make right now until we know the full picture of the workload that's in front of us. But I'll finish that statement by saying, if council wants it done, we'll find a way to get it done.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I think that, you know, in reading your report, you know, back in December, this was brought forward and it was deferred. So we could give you direction on the strat plan. As a member of the planning committee, I must say that Carl and the planning staff do an exceptional job in customer service, bringing forward applications in a timely manner. And so I'm not concerned about any stress on them, not to put any on you, but the point that you made about the difference between the strat plan and the heritage conservation district is the strat plan is town-wide. And, you know, I think that's important. And we're not going to put a timeline on it, I think, as we've just discussed. And it's going to be done internally. And I know you'd work with the Municipal Heritage Committee on that. So I think that I'm happy to I mean, you've made a recommendation in this report that is a report that's been deferred since December, and I accept that. And I look forward to it. I look forward to both projects, but I'm fine with your recommendation to go ahead and get started on this one with no deadline, given the workload that you guys are under.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Miller, did you have your hand up? Nope. Okay. So I guess we're looking for direction on whether we should move forward with this or just kind of take our time. And I do hear what everyone's saying. It's and I read this report and I thought, oh my goodness, this really is a lot of work. So if it is going to move forward, I do believe it needs to be done in very small, tiny steps, because I do believe that town staff have a lot on their shoulders. But it's not something that we should be burying or forgetting about. Councillor McGuire, I see your hand up, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I don't know that going about this with an open deadline is going to be the best option here, because we do have so much going on. And I think, you know, the next reports about the Bill 23 changes, the planning department right now is a dynamic place and there's a lot going on. I think as much as this is a town-wide exercise, it's very clear consensus among the returning members of the committee that this HCD is a thing that needs to be investigated further. It's a thing that we put a six-figure sum on the budget for. There's been a lot of momentum on that moving forward, and it's been momentum that's built up over the last 10 years. I think to try to do too much right now, we're not going to have as strong of a strategic plan result, because in all likelihood, it'll get finished before the HCD, because the HCD has the mandatory consultations, and it's a bit of a process to do it right, and it takes time to do it right. And to do a strategic plan before such a major exercise is started even leaves the strategic plan out of date shortly after it's published and approved by council. So this is where there's nothing in this report that's not a great idea. It's all about the timing of, is it the best timing today in February 2023, or is it the best timing maybe in 2024, 2025, when we have, maybe we don't go through with the HCD, maybe we do, but the data that we'll have from going through the process of studying it will make that strategic plan much stronger in the future. So I really encourage my colleagues to think about that, and I'd like to see a straw vote on this before we move forward.
Okay. Councillor McKenna, did you?
Well, yeah, thank you. I was concerned when I read the report about just how much work was going to be involved in both of these initiatives. And so Councillor McGuire, and I'm sure he's accurately reflecting the committee. And so I don't want to ignore the committee's input if they're suggesting their number one priority is the Heritage Conservation District and getting going on that. Then I think Councillor McGuire's made some sound arguments. If the strategic plan is not a prerequisite to the Heritage Conservation District, then I'm going to agree with my colleague, Councillor McGuire, and get going on one rather than both.
So on this, this evening, moving forward, how are people feeling that maybe we should just take our time on this and look at leaving it until after the strategic plan is done and then move into it? Because it is a big workload. It really is. So I'd just like some nodding heads on that. What do people think, that we should put it on hold for a bit? Just so when it does get started and we can handle this workload that is there. Just ideas.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
maybe the question is whether my colleagues support the staff recommendation or not. That's pretty simple.
Thank you for that. So does councillors support the staff recommendation on this? Can we just have a straw vote? Just yes. 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 So that was 2. And you have something else, Councillor Brennan? No? No. Councillor McGuire? Did you have something else to say? No?
Just, I
Councillor
think,
McKenna? You're not recommending the staff's recommendation, or you're not accepting the staff recommendation to move forward with this? You think we should put it on hold for a bit?
yeah, I think we should put it on hold, and I guess it would come down to, I'm seeing 3 votes for, 2 votes against, and so it'll come down to you if we move forward or not.
I would say let's put it on hold for now. If we're going to do it, have the time and do it properly. Put the proper amount of work into it. And it seems as if this is a big undertaking. Carl, we'll go back to you. Anything else you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, I appreciate the discussion, and these are good points all around. In my view, the strategic plan would not necessarily be there to recommend we proceed with an HCD or not proceed with an HCD. Like they can be looked at as separate items, and it can even make recommendations for something to be included in the later point. That being said, the workload balancing is important, and I think just to confirm council's direction, we are going to be wrapping up your strategic plan for the next 4 years in the next little while. So just to confirm your direction, are you looking, if that's the will of committee, if that's the will of committee this evening, would you like to resume this conversation later on this spring as part of that, or would there be some other timing or trigger to have another look at the question of the strategic plan? So the sense I'm getting from council is that it's not that you see the value in the plan, but you'd rather balance the projects and have a better sense of how everything else will fit in as far as the broader work plan for the municipality.
And I think you're getting it absolutely right. And I think that is a great idea if we just maybe put this off and bring it back later on in the season. Even the spring might be a little too soon, but
Madam Chair?
see how the work goes. Yes, Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Just so we know, there is 6 of us here, so that was a 3-3 vote.
Councillor McKenna, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Well, I did, but if Deputy Clerk Bennett wants to just give us some direction on that, and then I would add something.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly that was my understanding from watching the hands. That was 3-3. So we need direction, with majority as to whether this would go forward or not. So if you can just maybe discuss it a bit further and give us firm direction. I know Mayor Pinko's not here to break that tie, but we are at a tie right now.
So my point I was making, Madam Chair, was not we're not trying to put anything off. what I was arguing is that, or supporting, was that we move ahead as per the pace for a Heritage District plan. It might take us 2 or 3 years. That's fine. It was just the strategic plan, the broader one, was the one that I felt if we can't do both, the Heritage District plan is the one that, so that's what I was supporting.
Councillor McGuire?
Thanks, Madam Chair. My questions for Deputy Clerk Bennett. On a tie, would the motion fail? So the motion to support staff's recommendation fails. So there's no progress. Or what would we need a majority for?
So if this was being voted at council, and it came out 3-3, it would be a loss. So at this point in time, it's still at the committee of the whole stage for debate. So if council cannot come to a consensus tonight, certainly they have the option to defer it to a future meeting when there's a full council here to debate it further. Or, you could continue discussing it as well if you have more questions for either Senior Planner Grandkey or CAO Morris.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carl had an interesting suggestion, and perhaps my colleagues would find this appealing, is to get through our own town strategic plan first and then revisit this and see how the workload fits then. Would that be something we could compromise on?
Comments? Councillor McKenna, then Councillor Brennan.
Of course, the staff have to do all that work of designing the initiatives on those priorities that we've set. And certainly staff will have a better sense of what resources are required and the timing. So I'm fine with that. Nothing's going to happen before we wrap up that strategic plan anyways. I don't see it running out hiring consultants. So, and the mayor's input would be important as well. So it's not anything we need to decide tonight. I'm happy to bring it back.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I think that probably we should have it at the next committee of whole, so we have a full council, so we don't have a 3-3 anymore.
Okay. And so
I don't want to wait till we do a whole town strat plan. This came up in December, so it should come up sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Do I see thumbs up on that, leaving it on till the next committee of whole, and then there can be further discussion on it? Okay, that sounds like that's the recommendation, that we leave it till the next committee of whole and do a further discussion. Carl, we'll see you again talking more about this. And I thank you very much for that. Then we're moving on to, and Carl, don't go away, Bill 23 update and implications report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the council will recall, the province presented Bill 23 for adoption last fall, which substantially alters the way in which some planning and development administration processes are undertaken. In November, planning staff brought forward a report highlighting key aspects of this bill as it would relate to the town, and as directed by council, feedback was provided to the province. Shortly afterwards, Bill 23 was passed and given royal assent. It was passed in largely the same format as was originally presented. However, a few key changes were made through the process. The one to the development charges, which would have significant impacts on the town's finances. Some parts of Bill 23 came into effect immediately upon approval on November 28th, others on January 1st of this year, and others still haven't, and we don't know when those will apply. This report provides council with an update on where we're at with Bill 23, how it affects our operations and finance, and how the town is responding. Over the last couple of months, town staff have engaged with other municipal planning departments, stakeholders such as RVCA and Parks Canada, to explore how other municipalities are responding to Bill 23. We've also engaged with legal counsel some specific questions about how the changes affect us and some of the files that we're working on. It's fair to say that just about every planning, building, and finance department in the province has been having similar conversations. And based on that, it is important to note that this report is somewhat of a point in time exercise, as we're operating with the best information available to us now. So the courts and appeal bodies have not yet heard challenges to the law or land use planning appeals based on the new provisions, so they haven't been tested in that way. And the report summarizes some of the key changes and how we're responding. So site plan control, that's one of the key changes. And now units less than 10, now site or development proposals with less than 10 residential units are no longer subject to site plan control, and then the site plan control process will not be able to consider architectural design in development anymore. So certainly with respect to removing smaller units or smaller developments from site plan approval, we've worked with the building department and public works and others to best operationalize areas of applicable law that they still need to address. But that being said, it's fair to say that for a few projects, and I'll use an example, a development at the end of Chamber Street, for instance, where certain municipal works and a number of other pieces were administered through the site plan process, we would have to sort of pivot there to manage that development like that a different way with that process being removed. Our initial impression of the legislation was that landscaping as a whole was now out of bounds. However, in discussions with their solicitor, we will continue to be able to require the provision of landscaping that has a functional purpose or helps to protect other properties. We will just not be able to regulate it as a matter of design, and we will focus our review accordingly. So for instance, we can still use landscaping to manage buffering and screening between properties, putting up regulating, say, the screening of dumpsters on commercial sites and so on. So as the changes to the site plan process came into effect on November 28th, we've had to jump right into that. And the first thing that we did was that any open site plan applications were closed. We couldn't continue with the process. So for instance, that applied to a number of townhouse developments in the Bellamy Farms process. And then we've met with other departments and developers to make that transition from a planning to a building process as easy as possible. So in the short term, there are some planning and development tools that allow flexibility to ensure that matters of public interest are addressed for some development. And there are some tools under the Planning Act where we can look at using, say, a holding provision that's a form of zoning with a condition that requires some work to be done if we were to lift before the condition. Alternatively, we can approve a minor variance with a condition as well. Those conditions can include agreements or the completion of certain studies that require certain engineering or other things to be done. The town solicitor has advised that we do have those. We can still do that. We can still require development agreement as an approval condition, but it can't just be a way that we get around site plan. It needs to be justified there for reasonableness and good planning. So we will be exploring those on a case-by-case basis, but certainly there's the possibility that when more zoning amendments in the near future are coming to you, we'll be looking at holding provisions to make sure that if there is a key item identified through the review, that we still have the tools to address it. In the medium term, there are some different policy approaches that we can take to sort of capture some of these things that we no longer can through site plan control. The zoning bylaw is not, it's intended to regulate form and building form and land use, setbacks, those sorts of things. It doesn't typically get into design, but certainly some larger municipalities have more prescriptive zoning bylaws than we do that get into matters such as where the dumpster can be located, get into a little bit more prescriptive on what sort of landscaping can be done. And those are things that we can look at. It's not unusual to do a housekeeping amendment to a zoning bylaw after it's been approved. We have a brand new zoning bylaw, and it's unfortunate that potentially looking to open that up to housekeep it, but that is something that that we can look at in the coming months or so, and certainly other municipalities are looking at that as well. And staff are also have also engaged with other planning departments and other Eastern Ontario municipalities that are looking at site alteration bylaws and more prescriptive tree cutting policies, those sorts of things. And we will be investigating those and seeking council's direction on whether that's something that council wants to investigate any further. So we can look at that certainly within the next few months. In the longer term, certainly if these assuming these if these changes continue in sort of the trajectory they are, then council may be looking at other larger planning tools and potentially even looking at a development permit system rather than traditional zoning as a way to regulate land. And that's something that some smaller municipalities in Eastern Ontario have done. It hasn't had significantly wide uptake now, but I think others are looking at that now. And as we do our next official plan update, we're going to be investigating those. So in the coming years, we'll be looking at some of those broader policy discussions. How's the best way that council wants to regulate land use? So that's one of the most significant changes that impact the operations of planning staff. And I'll just quickly skim through the next couple. So triplexes, as council's aware, we have additional residential unit zoning policies that allow 2 dwellings within a main unit plus a third outside of that unit. So now we are obligated to allow potentially 3 dwelling units within a main house. That being said, we can still zone reasonable planning restrictions. That doesn't mean that every house is eligible for a triplex. Some lots may be too small. There are still design and planning considerations that we look at. And as we do the housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw, we will be looking to make sure, of course, that that the policies are worded exactly as council wants to. Conservation Authority review, there's been some attention certainly to some changes to the scope of Rideau Valley Conservation Authority and their colleagues in other municipalities. So this report focuses on how it relates to their work in the plan review process, and our understanding of the recent legislative changes is that they cannot be as involved in commenting on natural heritage features and ecological functions of developments, as well as on stormwater management as it relates to water quality. They can still speak to quantity. So these are some of these things are still items that we need expert opinion on to help us arrive at a full recommendation to council on planning applications. So we can't simply ignore those, and certainly a conservation authority has been very involved in a lot of files. So we have partnered a few years ago. We have partnered with an engineering firm for the review of some of the engineering plans that come our way that we can't review in-house. So we anticipate that we'll be able to expand that scope. We're also in discussions with our colleagues in other municipalities that have potentially in terms of sharing procurement with private consulting firms to speak on environmental impact studies and those sorts of features that we would be looking for professional review opinion on, especially as it relates to subdivisions or other larger developments. So certainly we will keep council up to date on that. Another change is public consultation on planning applications. Appeal rights have been removed now for minor variance and consent decisions. Previously, the previous version of Bill 23 suggested that appeal rights would be removed for zoning amendments as well. However, that was changed. So there's not much that we can really do about that. We're just updating statutory notices to align with the provincial regulations. Development charges is a big one. So Bill 23 does propose a number of changes to how development charges are calculated, as well as including the discounts that are phased in over 5 years, as well as discounts for purpose-built rentals. So when this was presented to council in November, it looked like that would only be applying to development charge bylaws that were approved after June 1st. It was actually backdated to January 1st. So now it would impact us. Our DC bylaw was approved earlier in the spring. The Hempson consultants, the consultants who prepared our development charges process and accumulated developed the projections that informed all of that work, kindly undertook just an analysis as to demonstrate what the overall impact would be on the municipality, and they're forecasting a total of $560,000 in development charge revenues that the town will be unable to collect over the next 5 years. So that includes for phase-in for residential units, non-residential units, as well as purpose-built discounts. So that is, I suppose, a change certainly that our finance department has been keeping well up to date on. As a response, we are updating the development charges brochure and applicable publications. We obviously want to make sure that that builders and customers are kept up to date on these things. There have been a few changes to the Heritage Act as well. One of those is increasing the threshold by which we consider designating heritage properties, and something that is of so I don't see that as being a significant overall change to our operations. The Municipal Heritage Committee follows a very thoughtful and detailed approach when identifying properties for designation, and certainly I can't think of anything that's been proposed for designation in the last couple of decades in our town that wouldn't meet the new criteria that are being proposed. What's a broader change, I think, that will impact us in the coming 2 years is that properties that are listed as properties of interest that are not actually designated right now, the listing really the effect of the listing is to highlight the town's acknowledgement and recognition of the historic significance of a property, and prevent it from and put a pause on a proposal for demolition. So properties can be listed for a variety of reasons and can stay that way for quite some time. So what the proposal, or what Bill 23 now requires, is that municipalities make a decision on designating all of those properties within 2 years, or else they lose that listing. And it's fair to say that a handful of these properties never will be designated, or there'll be no value to designating them for a variety of reasons. But that does put a little bit of work on the Municipal Heritage Committee in the next little while, as part of their mandate is to advise council on designation. So we'll be consulting with the Heritage Committee over the course of 2023, looking for their advice on which of our designated, or which of our listed properties, the 32 properties, should be designated under the Heritage Act. And then that will, of course, have budgets, and then that will help inform a budget proposal for council's consideration for 2024. There is research and some professional consultation that we rely on to develop a designation bylaw. There is some technical investigation that will need to be done. So that will be presented for council's budget consideration in 2024. So there's a number of changes that aren't some of the financial changes regarding attainable housing rebates as well, that have not yet been fleshed out and are not yet in effect. We don't know when they are. So at this point, this report is presented for council's information and to give council an idea of where we're at with Bill 23 and how staff are responding to it. And I'll welcome any questions or discussion that council may have.
Do we have any questions? Carl. Councillor Brennan?
Thanks, Carl. There's a lot to chew on in this particular piece of legislation. It's almost omnibus. And I think you've done a great job in summarizing how it affects us. And I would be interested to know, maybe the councillors that are at the municipal convention, what the conventional, or what the feeling was, or did you see anything on this piece of legislation? Because it's a hot topic with the 440 municipalities in Ontario. So, but you know, you've given a great synopsis of how it affects us and what we need to be ready for. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? And Carl, this is a lot of work, just this one report, and we thank you for everything that you have given us here. And the recommendation is that council receives this support or this report for information purposes. And certainly I would think that this is a yes, we do. And CAO Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To respond to Councillor Brennan's question, I didn't see a lot, or certainly didn't attend any sessions where Bill 23 was being discussed. The members of council that were there may have been exposed to it, but I found there was shockingly little discussion about Bill 23, given the magnitude. That might be owing to the rural nature of the conference, where DCs tend to impact urban municipalities a bit more. But I would defer to Councillor Robinson or Councillor McKenna if they were involved in any discussion. It didn't come up at the Ministers' Forum either, which I found quite surprising.
Councillor McKenna, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Mr. Granke. I agree with Councillor Brennan. You've summarized it quite nicely, and I also there was a very rural flavor, Councillor Brennan, to the conference, and the housing crisis is, I think, it's felt everywhere, but more acutely in the towns and larger towns and cities. So there was a lot of talk. I guess if we were to take the Bill 23 at face value, at least the part that said we need to build over 1 million homes in the next 10 years, and the intent, again, at face value, is to reduce some of the burdens that builders and developers and others have identified, and the government, in good faith, I hope, is trying to remove some of those. I just found in your report, if we were to look at design and planning as you've done, and we've considered options, what you've identified is several other ways to regulate, almost as workarounds to some of the changes that are being proposed. And what I didn't hear was ways of not embracing the legislation, but how can we reduce this seeming burden on developers? There is a housing crisis. We feel it in our community. And I just want to make sure that if any of these have merit, that we're embracing them and trying to expedite the building. I hesitate to say some of my colleagues' favorite, cutting red tape, but there is a point here where we do want to find ways, as opposed to finding workarounds to find another way to regulate it or to control something. Is it time to let go some of these things? And you're the planner. Are some of the workarounds because that's the way we've done it, and that's good planning? And is it a need or is it a want? So I know there's a question in there somewhere. Is a lot of what you identified is workarounds to mitigate the impact of this legislation. There has to be something in there that we can accelerate or embrace, I hope.
Carl?
I think, and I thank you, Councillor. That's a very, very fair point. And I think certainly in my read of the legislation as well as the process is that really this is something we do not want to ever regulate for the sake of regulating. And I think we have to approach everything on a case-by-case basis. If there is a fundamental public interest, if there is a matter of public health and safety or real community interest that needs to be looked at, then certainly we have tools. I definitely am not, in some ways this does, like, as an example, we've historically done site plan agreements for townhouses for Bellamy Farms. There's lots of townhouses for Bellamy Farms. There's, I think, in the phase that they're building out right now, there's about 38 blocks, and under the previous regime, there'd be 38 site plan agreements. And that's certainly the removal of site plan agreements there, while we're transitioning and sort of working with the other departments to on the requirements, and we'll look at perhaps the subdivision agreement sort of as the next phase. Is I certainly welcome the opportunity not to do 38 almost identical site plan agreements. That's a lot of work for staff and for the developers as well. And I think there's definitely I can certainly appreciate that. I think with everything else, I think the key thing is we're not to put on a requirement, because that's how we're used to always doing it, but there should be a key public interest, and the point that you raise is well taken, and part of those conversations we're going to be having over the next few months are looking at some of those tools that are available to the municipalities under existing legislation, including the Municipal Act, as well as remaining options under the Planning Act, and giving council the discretion as to which of those are tools that you want to embrace or use, or which ones we feel that aren't the right fit for Smith Falls right now. So I think the process of sort of assessing the impacts of how we regulate development has begun, but it's one that's going to take some time as we figure that, as we sort of work our way through all of that, but also sort of embracing and recognizing the key intent of the legislation, which is not to I think for most of these we still have the ability to regulate, but it comes to the question of do we want to, and I think if I am going to be recommending a condition of a holding zone, for instance, or a condition of some other sort of condition, it's something that needs to be justified and supported on a case-by-case basis, rather than just as a matter of course and expectation. And I think there's value in that. Does that respond to your question, Councillor?
Yes, I see him nodding his head. Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. I don't recall, there was a lot of speeches that mentioned the words Bill 23, but there was no discussion around that. And everything you've told us tonight, I learned a lot more in that short period than I learned in 3 days about Bill 23. So there was really nothing, which I kind of was surprised at, even though it was a rural municipality conference. It still applies to us, so anyway, thanks for your report.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'll just be brief, because to Councillor McKenna's point, I totally agree that it's about building more homes faster. And the question about, and then alluded to the site plan part of it. And I know that from experience in the planning committee, site plan often became sort of frustrating, because it was big discussions about what color the siding is going to be. At one time it was what kind of tree you're going to plant. And so, and they were all good discussions. And, I would say in every case, and Planner Granke would agree with me, that in every case, the input was taken and received and implemented by whoever was building whatever. But when you have townhomes by the dozens and you do it each and every time, that's a waste of time. And so that's the point that, and then if does something come up, then we have a planner that has a way to, to mark it, put a holding provision on and bring it forward. But overall, I like the legislation, and I think it's going to help. And notwithstanding the 500 grand we're going to lose over 5 years, however, we've gotten zero before last spring. This is the first year we've had development charges in this town. So I don't know what else the province is supposed to do. And everybody will agree there's a housing problem. And I'm not sure what else they're supposed to do, but do something like this. Think outside the box and get it done. Not to borrow a phrase.
Thank you. Any more comments, questions? No, this will be coming forward. It's here for information, and there's an awful lot of information in this. Carl, you did a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of work involved in moving forward with all this, and we thank you so very much for that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think CEO Morris had her stand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Morris.
Yes, thank you. I just feel compelled to I guess provide a perspective. It's a noble goal, and it's something we should all be working towards, to speed up and build more homes faster. I don't think too many would argue with that. But we do have to remember that once it's built, that street becomes ours, and we own it, and we have to maintain it. And the one that rises to the surface, no pun intended, is stormwater management. If you don't get that right, you pay for it in perpetuity. And I can tell you, I've seen subdivisions that have been built incorrectly, and it becomes an operational issue, and the municipality's left to solve it after the fact. So while I applaud efforts to become more streamlined and look for synergies, we need to do that. This whole process has forced us to do that. And I think that's a good thing. But I would suggest we can't do it at the price of inadequate development that is problematic in the long term. Building it is one small slice in time. Managing it in perpetuity is a much longer period of time. And so getting it right is important. If we can do it fast and get it right, wonderful. I would really caution against doing it fast and doing it wrong.
Councillor McGuire, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I really appreciate your comments, CEO Morris. I have real concerns with this legislation that, as much as there's a housing crisis and more homes built faster, as you say, is a noble goal, I'm worried this is going to be more of a poor homes built on rich land situation, where we're taking out the natural heritage features that provide a sustainable way of dealing with stormwater management. We're taking out the heritage architectural features that give the fabric of the community. We're taking, when it comes to subdivisions and new builds, there's definitely a lot more leeway. But what I'm worried about with this legislation is what it's going to change with infill development, and how that infill development could negatively affect our existing communities and the cost to the municipality over time. We know at a minimum it's going to be over $110,000 a year with the lost money from the development charges. And as much as Smith Falls isn't used to having that money coming in, I think we have to look at our infrastructure deficit when we've got this backlog of projects. A big factor in that is that we've been subsidizing new development instead of using the tax base to repair the existing development in the asset management plan. So this is going to put our asset management plan further back. It's going to put a much larger burden on the taxpayers over time. As you go through it, Carl, there's great information here. A ton of work went into this, and I appreciate it. And I keep waiting for the good news to come. As we go through it, it's like, okay, this is going to be a challenge. This is going to be a challenge. And then we get to the end, and it leaves a lot to be desired. I don't see this as streamlining the things that I see that block development. And it's harder to go after the things that I think are going to make a difference. This is more of it's too high level to, I think, fix things at the developer scale the way they think it will. One, I'm going to try to make it a silver lining about this is the heritage changes. In Smith Falls, the route we've been doing is taking our properties and putting them on the properties of interest list. And that's if it's going to be demolished. We've got 60 days to figure out if we want to designate it or not, or do something with it. instead of, I think, the 30 days is the default. And that properties of interest list is effectively getting eliminated through this legislation. And back to our previous discussion, it's going to create a huge burden to try to designate all of these properties individually and have that debate, have that research. A huge amount of resources could go into that. And I think the flip side is that all of a sudden heritage conservation districts are a much stronger planning tool for preserving the architecture and the feel of the neighborhoods. And I think that's going to have to be our go-to to preserving the look and feel of say the red brick houses on the north side of town, or the newer houses on the south side of town, for those neighborhoods that want to maintain their character, the downtown that wants to maintain its character. So through this, I see heritage conservation districts becoming much more important in the future, depending on how things play out. But really appreciate the information tonight, and thank you very much, Senior Planner Cranky.
Thank you. No other comments. This has been well discussed, and there is an awful lot of work in there, and this is coming forward as information for us, and I can see where we're going to have to stay on top of all of this. Well, Carl, you're going to have to stay on top of all of this and guide us. Thank you. So nothing else to be said. We will move on to the next, and Carl, that's with you again. Sign bylaw exemption for 60 Cornelia Street West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make this brief. We have a request from the Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital to vary the town's current sign bylaw to allow for a trailer sign outside on Cornelia Street outside of the hospital. The request that came in originally was to allow that permanently, initially to advertise for recruiting staff, but also in the future to also accommodate public service announcements, closures, those sorts of things. So the sign bylaw currently regulates trailer signs and allows them only on industrial or commercial zoned properties, and also recognizes that they're fundamentally of a transient nature. They should not be there permanently, but that's according to the sign bylaw that's in effect today. The hospital is currently zoned institutional, so there's no allowance for a trailer sign, and accordingly they've applied to the town for a variance, and that the approval authority for that variance is council. So the staff recommendation in this case is to allow the trailer sign for a year, which would adequately give the hospital the opportunity to consider a permanent sign placement. And if that's the will of council, then we'll request direction to finalize a bylaw authorizing that exemption.
I am at the moment seeing thumbs up. So it sounds as if that recommendation is certainly approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will come forward to a future meeting to be passed. Thank you very much, Carl. You did a lot of work tonight. You really did. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to the next, and that is County of Lanark Climate Action Working Group report. And this is with Deputy Costello, please.
Thank you. Item this evening bringing to your attention some new terms of reference from the County of Lanark for a working group, the Lanark Climate Action Working Group. And they're looking to have representation from Smith Falls in this working group. As you can see, the recommendation is that we appoint an elected official. Previously with this committee, Mayor Panko sat on this committee previously. This committee is looking to make Lanark County an environmentally sustainable place to live, work, and play, and to fulfill the County Council's mandate to implement climate action plan. As you're all aware, CAO Morris brought forward a report previously regarding the FCM's initiative for Partners for Climate Protection Milestones, and that was brought forward in November of 2019. And since then, Council has passed a resolution to partake in that in that program. So we have Senior Planner Grenke, who is going to be the staff resource, and he'll be bringing forward draft terms of reference for the town of Smiths Falls climate protection group. And that'll be coming forward later this month. In the interim, like I said, the county council is looking to appoint someone from Smiths Falls to sit on their working group on an as-needed basis. In your report, I did attach the new terms of reference that have been slightly amended from the previous committee. So looking to see if there's any volunteers from an elected official. Since Mayor Panko sat on it previously, it's being recommended that we have another elected official on this working group.
On that, I would volunteer. I don't have a whole lot on my plate, so and this is quite interesting. If that is in agreement with everyone, I wouldn't have an issue. Other comments? No?
You got the thumbs up.
We
Madam
got
Chair?
the thumbs up. Thank you so much, Carrie, for this, and that will come forward at a further meeting. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Guess where we are now? We're at adjournment. And recommended motion that the committee adjourns its proceedings at, better check the time here, 6:54 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor?
Oh, Madam Chair, can we get a mover and seconder?
Mover and a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Brennan and Councillor Robinson. Thank you very much. And I appreciate all the help tonight. And Councillor McGuire, thank you very much for your help today. That was wonderful. And have a good evening.